Welcome back to the Birdhouse Dynasty show, brought to you by Choice Sports Cards, your number one choice in buying and selling sports cards. Check out Kyle and the boys on Whatnot. They're having a great time over there tonight, I'm sure. And we're going to have a great time tonight talking Dynasty Best Ball Startup Draft. And we're going to get right into it with our first annual Birdhouse Dynasty Best Ball Draft. We're going to give you some direct analysis round by round here. I'm going to give you my favorite and least favorite picks and listen into the chat here, see what the fellas have to say. I know some of them. We're in the 27th round of 30, and so we're almost finished up. I did go over the first 5 rounds on the previous show. Now, haven't been live in a while, so it's great to be back here for you guys. And let's get right to it. Let me bring this up for you. Go get this here. Bring it up. Yeah, there we go. All right. Let's see what we've got for you here. Okay. Go slide on down, see where we're at. Just got back from the store here. Okay, we are in the middle of the 27th round. We're at the 2708 with Chris Cash Money, and he's out in Vegas. We're going to make sure he knows he's up. There we go. All right. So, yes, it was round 2702, where I selected Cody Schrader, running back for the Niners out of Missouri. For that, I took Ryan Flornay, the new rookie wide receiver for the Cowboys, stack up with Dak Prescott, my second round pick. Way back up here. Sorry, third round pick. And so we are in the draft room here. So last time we were here, we went through rounds four or five. It was 4. So I'm going to bring this down. Let me see. Yeah, we can do this. There we go. All right. Actually, to analyze round 5 here, we're going to stay just like this right here. Okay. So, had a lot of action in round 5, including yours truly. I pulled off one of the wilder deals in this draft, in the startup, and it went against what we normally would do, in that I did trade my 25 first in this deal. I pulled this trade off with Hergot, and before this deal, there were hardly any trades that went down in this draft. As you can see, the only previous trade was Chris Cash Money dealing with Scoopadopoulos, so he could go and nab Trey McBride here right at the end of the 4th round. And so let's see here. What happened was Chris Cash Money gave up his 25 first and second and his 9th round pick so that he could get Scoopadopoulos's 412. Now, I wasn't a big fan of that deal, because giving up your first and second in the future, if I were to do something like that, I would ideally be doing something like that to grab a quarterback in a super flex league. Now, I understand wanting Trey McBride and the positional advantage of a tight end, but I don't know that really makes sense this year with all of the tight ends. There's so many young, good tight ends. And as you can see, when we go down this draft board, I mean, Bowers went next, Kelsey later, uh, Pitts here at the 612, Andrews at the 705, Hawkinson at the 804. I mean, yeah, Ferguson down here. You can see there's tight end value all over the place. I mean, Njoku went at the 1006, and yours truly, I was able to grab Evan Ingram at the 1102. So jumping all the way up to the end of the fourth round to grab Trey McBride. Well, Trey McBride may be a great talent to have. I just don't love the value there of doing such a thing. Scupadopoulos ended up grabbing with that ninth rounder Ricky Pearsall, and he also gets Chris Cash Money's first and second and 25. Now, if it happens to give Chris Cash Money the title, well, then I mean, by all means, it'll be well worth it. Okay. But we'll have to wait about 7, 8 months to find out that. Now, back to my big trade because it was quite a doozy, and I could get some very bad feedback on this. So what I saw, there weren't any trades getting done. And out of the blue, it came to me, how am I going to gain some kind of leverage in this league? Right? Normally, I will try and do a trade like Scupadopoulos did, where I trade back to gain somebody's future first, and then I have a little bit of leverage in that draft, right? Well, nobody else was doing a deal like that. So what I thought was, the word on the street is that the 26 draft is better than the 25 draft. The 25 draft right now is looking like it's loaded at running back. Now, typically that's not awesome in a super flex league, right? The running back is like after quarterback and wide receiver, definitely positional wise. So I'm not looking at the 25 draft. I'm looking at the 26 draft as the golden goose here, right? So what I decided to do was trade my whole 25 draft for Hergott's whole 26 draft. So we gave up each other's all four picks in each draft to gain that leverage within that draft, if that makes sense. So Hergott's getting the earlier year, which does potentially give him that advantage. He could end up with an early 25 first and then another 25 first that he could even use then to trade back into the 26, get a 26 first plus something maybe. So there's a lot of advantages there to owning the earlier year still, even though it may not look as talented right now. The 26 class, conversely, whereas the 25 class is loaded at running back, it only projects to have 3 first-round quarterbacks right now. The 26 class is projected to have 5 first-round quarterbacks right now, and that's 2 years away yet. There may be other quarterbacks that jump up into the first round. So that class is looking nice and loaded, just like this year's class. And so I'm looking at that class as something that I can use in the future. Nice assets to have. And so what I got though for trading for the later year, I got to move up from my pick at 6'11 up to the 505 because I wanted a quarterback in this tier here of Baker, Levis, Watson, Cousins, Stafford, Bryce Young-ish. I wanted to have the most stable quarterback as my quarterback too. And how do you find stability? You look at the contracts. And Baker just got signed to a 3-year guaranteed deal. Now, had the Falcons not drafted Michael Penix, I definitely would have been more comfortable just waiting on Cousins. But with the drafting of Michael Penix, it makes Cousins a little more leery. Of course, you look at Deshaun Watson, and he does have a guaranteed contract, but he didn't exactly play all that well last year. Then you have the wild card and Will Levis, and I love Will Levis's prospects for this year. But same token, on the flip side, Will Levis could crash and burn absolutely this year. And then the Titans are looking for another quarterback in next year's draft. So there's no guarantees for Will Levis. Stafford's, of course, on the older side, and Bryce Young, well, he just didn't exactly set the world on fire last year. But Baker Mayfield did. He did so to the tone of getting a 3-year guaranteed deal from the Bucks. Now, of course, I'm a Tampa fan, so it's a little off. It looks a little looks a little bad that way for sure. But the optics are there. Like Baker Mayfield was a former first overall pick, and he struggled in Cleveland, no doubt, but there was a lot of turmoil in Cleveland during his tenure there. He had multiple offensive coordinators. I think every year he was there, he had a different offensive system. So, am I trying to defend this pick with all this? Yes, sure. But Mayfield is more stable than these other guys, no doubt. And I saw Baker as having a lot of options, being this is a best ball draft. I saw Mike Evans out there, Chris Godwin out there, some younger receivers afterwards out there as great stacking opportunities. So I just went ahead, pulled the trigger, gained that leverage in the 26th draft. We'll see how it works out. I don't know. I mean, it kind of forced my hand into a win now mode, but I was able to get many win now assets later on, as you can see coming up. Now, what I found in this draft in particular, and this goes for all startups this year at least, it's sort of right in the middle of this fifth round is about where the cutoff is, I'd say, right where Saquon got taken. Before him, we had DJ Moore, Zay Flowers, A Chain, Bowers, McBride, DK, Devontae Smith, those types, right? Right about here is where I see a cutoff, and then you go to Tank Dell, Jaden Reed, Kyron Williams, Levis, Higgins, Jacobs, Kelsey, and so on down. So I see a cutoff right there where you could say you kind of drop a tier just based off of the wide receivers getting looked at. Now I would have T. Higgins probably ahead of Jaden Reed and Tank Dell, but that's arguable with T. Higgins' contract situation. So I I just want to see if anybody else can get in here. Just checking my messages quick. All right. So anyway, that is my observation of where you get that clear tier break, in my opinion. Saquon landing in Philly, it's a great opportunity for him to resurrect his career the way Christian McCaffrey did in San Francisco. I don't know if he'll be exactly that good, but Saquon definitely could get into the double digits for touchdowns, something he hasn't done in a while, at least. Now, what I want to do is break this down team by team actually and give you my favorite picks from each team and the ones that I disliked. All right. So we're gonna start over here with I am Havdi and Ryan's picks here. This is the first full startup I've done with Ryan, and I can say from his picks, he knows what he's doing. I can't that's just in general, this whole league here. This was a very difficult draft to be a part of because everybody knew what they were doing. Everybody had a plan. There were no there were no newbies, nobody that you could just take advantage of, and that makes for a good league. So I'm very proud of everyone in this league. I can't say that anybody really screwed the pooch here. I'm very proud of everyone in this league, and I'm happy to be part of it. I will say that. So if I'm going to get critical here, though, because what my that's what my job is here to do, right? So with Havdi, started off with Josh Allen, Brock Purdy, then landed at we did third round reversal. So he had the last pick in the third, first pick in the fourth, two nice picks in Brandon Ayuk and Dalton Kincaid. Kincaid was one of my favorite picks for him. He landed both stacks to his stud quarterbacks. Kincaid is just looking real juicy this offseason with Stephon Diggs getting sent out of town. He is I mean, I don't know how many targets this guy is going to get, but it'll be a lot. All right. Then on the way back, at the end of the fifth, he was able to scoop up Josh Jacobs. Now, I don't know if that's my favorite pick, but it's not terrible. Okay. I would have probably looked wide receiver. However, T. Higgins had just gone. If he decided to go Debo, that would have been really investing heavily into the San Francisco offense. Now, personally, I love stacking, so I wouldn't have mind the double stack with Purdy there and Ayuk, making it a triple stack. But he decided to go with the running back and Josh Jacobs. It's a little questionable with the contract situation there. They signed him to a 4-year deal, but it really has an out after every season. So it could only end up being a 1-year deal, to be honest. All right. Now, when we go to his next pick, is where I question it. He already had grabbed Dalton Kincaid. We still had Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews on the board, and he decided to jump on Travis Kelce. Now, I love Travis Kelce. Don't get me wrong. I've got him on plenty of my championship dynasty rosters. I just I don't know if he was trying to make sure Charlie Parrish didn't get him because he has Mahomes, but he already had Kincaid. I guess I would have looked elsewhere. That's all I'm saying. All right. But other than that, you did go towards the win now mold then. He grabbed Derrick Henry the following round. Then he went and stacked. Then he loaded up on receivers, going 6 straight wide receivers, which I love. I Quentin Johnston isn't exactly my favorite guy. He maybe should have taken somebody else there, in my opinion. But the others, I don't mind. I mean, Diggs, Kirk, A.D. Mitchell, Jerry Judy, Quentin Johnston, and Jacoby Myers, all startable receivers in best ball, at least. And then he followed him up. He grabbed another Niners wide receiver and Jacob Cowing later on. So I do like Hovde's draft, to be honest with you. Now we'll go on to Mr. Charlie Parrish. Charlie, again, as well. This was the first dynasty startup I took part of with Charlie, and he did quite well as well, starting off with 2 quarterbacks. Very nice, getting Mahomes and Lawrence. Then grabbed a hero running back and Jonathan Taylor. Don't love it, but don't mind it either, because he came right back and scooped up Michael Pittman. And then he followed it up with T. Higgins and Brian Thomas getting the stack, with Trevor Lawrence nabbing his new rookie wide receiver, then grabbed the flashy rookie Jonathan Brooks from Carolina, and then nope, sorry, that was Hergot that traded there. Charlie Parrish went over here. He grabbed Mark Andrews and then Trey Benson on the way back. So looking at his picks, I go further down here to round 10 where he grabbed Alvin Kamara. Now, I don't mind Kamara on a win now type team. I don't love it though when Gabe Davis and Curtis Samuel were options out there. Gabe Davis would have given him another stack. He was able to get him way down here, and where was Curtis Samuel? He did grab Curtis Samuel later. So I guess I don't know. My point being with Kamara is I probably would have gone one other wide receiver, just grabbed Kamara. I mean, he could have fallen to his next pick. Yes, that it's a very how do I put it? I'm really grasping at straws to critique his first 12, 13 picks, honestly. Charlie did a very good job, and I think he's going to have a nice, solid roster. All right. Moving on to Frosty's and Collins draft. Started out with CJ Stroud at the 3 hole, which, I know where Stroud's value is at. I don't love it where his value is at. Personally, I would rather have Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson, even maybe Joe Burrow over Stroud. That's just my opinion. But I mean, by the end of this next season, you could see Anthony Richardson ahead of Stroud. The point being is that Stroud doesn't have any rushing upside, and that makes it very difficult to finish top five in fantasy these days. When you have Josh Allen, you have Jalen Hurts, you have Lamar Jackson, now you have Anthony Richardson, you have Jaden Daniels type. Okay, these guys put up monster rushing numbers, and it just makes it so much easier for them to score, especially like in a best ball format. So again, CJ Stroud had an awesome rookie season. Don't get me wrong in the way I'm putting this, but I just don't love him in the top three. I don't put him on the level of Mahomes yet. Mahomes definitely doesn't have the rushing upside of those other guys, but he is Patrick Mahomes, and we all see him as a future Hall of Famer. We know what he's done, and so I don't know. We'll see how Stroud does this season. Now, Frosties was able to grab Nico Collins in the fourth round. Love that pick. Again, another pick. A few of these guys are from Houston, so they were not happy with the Stroud pick, not happy with the Nico Collins pick, but Colin went ahead and grabbed him anyway. So then he went and grabbed Will Levis in the following round. I liked that gamble. I think Will Levis will do well this season with his new weapons. Um, where it gets a little dicey with Colin is later on down here when we look at his picks in the ninth and 10th round. So let's go ahead and analyze this a little. Right up here. So Frosty's picks of Christian Watson and Jamison Williams. Now on the surface, they seem like great best ball players, right? But as you can see, right after JMO went, we had Deontay Johnson. Now I see Deontay Johnson getting a zillion targets in Carolina this year, coming in via trade from the Steelers, the perfect type of weapon for the young Bryce Young. And I think he will take over many of the targets that were going to Adam Thielen last year. Deontay Johnson's still just 27 years old. And I think that I would have diversified a little better here. So instead of grabbing Christian Watson, I probably would have grabbed either Christian Kirk or Deontay Johnson. That's all I'm saying. I don't mind going for the home run swing on one of them, but to swing it on both of them, I think is a little questionable. Now, that's okay. We are gambling here after all, right? So he chose to go that route. Can't blame the guy for trying. All right. Next up, we have NLSK 22. That's my boy Mark. And he started off with the tush push master and Jalen Hurts. Now we'll see how many tush pushes he gets this year without Jason Kelsey snapping him the ball. But I love that pick at the 104 for him. He went maybe a little high on Malik Neighbors, but I understand the love. The guy is electric. No problem, really. Grab Drake London on the way near the end of the third round then. And the pick I love the most for Mark is Jared Goff at in the fourth round. Now, this was prior to Goff signing his new big contract. And I pretty much knew that Goff wasn't going to fall to me at the 502, but that was somebody I was definitely eyeing up to try and acquire. So anyway, he grabbed Goff. Now he followed it up with the pick that I really didn't love in Kyron Williams. Williams' value has been just plummeting ever since Blake Corum was drafted. Kyron Williams to me is the classic example of a volume producer. he was a guy that was there in a solid scoring offense with the Rams, and he got his points off of volume. The dude was a fifth or sixth round pick, whatever it was. Don't love him there. I would have grabbed a different a receiver probably, but I understand not having a running back yet, going that route. Next pick was Debo. Don't mind that at all. Took a swing on Justin Fields with his following pick, then took a swing on the injured TJ Hawkinson. So there is some heavy volatility in Mark's following picks. And when I get critical is with his next pick here in the 12th round with Ben Sinnott. Okay. Dallas Goedert was just taken. I'm sure that's who he wanted probably because he has Jalen Hurts. So I think he scrambled a bit and decided he still had to go tight end and went with the rookie Ben Sinnott, who's been moving up the boards. And so be it. That's who he grabbed. I personally would have looked at another wide receiver. Okay, he was able to get Deontay Johnson a couple rounds earlier, who I already mentioned I like. So that was his fourth wide receiver. I guess just at this point in the draft, round 12, I would like to have more than four wide receivers only. All right. That's all I'm saying. That point in the draft, I would like to have at least five or six. He followed it up with two straight wide receivers, but they're just Dontavian Wicks and Malachi Corley, two dart throws at this point. Very talented, each of them are, but I guess I just would have liked to see a little more. I mean, Troy Franken, for instance, has way more talent than either Wicks or Malachi Corley. Could have had him. That's what the one pick that I didn't love from him. He was able to nab Raheem Mostert down in the 15th round, one of the greatest win now assets you could grab in Dynasty right now. So Mark did not have a terrible draft at all. I'm just throwing out my critique. Next up, we had Chris Cash Money, who I already went over his big deal that he made at the end of the 5th round. Chris Cash Money started off wide receiver heavy, grabbing the number one wide receiver from last year in CeeDee Lamb. And then Garrett Wilson followed it up with Tua, then the rookie Roma Dunze. Yep. I want to show you my favorite pick from him. It actually was another trade he made where he moved up in the 8th round to grab Aaron Rodgers, stack up Garrett Wilson. I think Rodgers will be back strong this year. He's got too big of a chip on his shoulder to lay down and roll off into the sunset in a bad way. So I think Rodgers is going to bounce back strong this year. And I see him definitely playing more than just one season. So I think that Chris Cash Money will get his money's worth out of that trade up. I know that Rodgers' value maybe lower right now on keep trade cut, but that's just a perceived value. He was injured last season, so he automatically lost some value from that. There's a lot of heavy critique on him. You know, oh, the Jets are going to run the ball, blah, blah, blah. They only have Garrett Wilson. So what? I think Rodgers can still put up numbers, and I think he'll be all right there. Next up, we have J.M. Enke, which is the tandem of J.M. Enke and the People's Champs combining to be the Smash Brothers. These guys like to diversify, starting off with quarterback, running back, and then the top tight end in Sam Laporta. After that, they went with the rookie Drake May and then nabbed Tank Dell in the middle of the 5th. Now, again, this is the region where I would have looked to probably trade back just because after Saquon got taken, I saw a tear. Now, he ended up they grabbed Tank Dell, then went running back again with Kenneth Walker, who I also am not in love with. So I probably would have grabbed wide receiver there. But then they followed it up with Isaiah Pacheco. So 7 rounds in, and they had 3 running backs already. Now, there's nothing wrong with the 3 running backs in Bijan, Kenneth Walker, and Isaiah Pacheco by themselves. But having those 3 all together, where he could have had, you know, let's see, Devontae Adams was taken. They could have taken Stephon Diggs. Now, granted, they did take Tank Dell 2 rounds earlier. I'm just saying if they could have figured out a way to have a little better wide receivers going for them after 7 rounds, that's what I would have looked at. But again, I'm just giving my critique, and that's what I feel. Next up, we have the Fantasy Reaper. Started off the draft with Joe Burrow coming back from an injury-riddled season. I think Burrow will be just fine. After that, grabbed A.J. Brown and then Chris Olave. Then he grabbed the value at running back that was falling in Travis Etienne. He followed it up with another running back, which I didn't love. However, the running back that he got, I do love the value of getting Saquon. Saquon, you could argue, could have easily been taken at the same time he took Etienne. So getting him a round later on top of it forced him into a little bit of a different build, but I don't hate what he ended up with. He got Kirk Cousins, who I think will be solid for 2 seasons, even with Michael Penix in the fold. So I don't mind grabbing Kirk Cousins there. Then followed up with a great win now asset in Devontae Adams. Continued down that road with George Kittle in the next pick. Then Ramondre Stevenson. Now, when he took Stevenson, that's where I question it. He could have grabbed Calvin Ridley or Hollywood Brown or Christian Kirk or Deontay Johnson, just a little more stable, solid wide receiver. That's what I would have done in that spot. But again, he grabbed a lot of great value early on, right? Followed it up. He got Keenan Allen later on. So he has some awesome win now assets in Keenan, Kittle, Adams, Cousins, Barkley. I mean, he is looking strong for this upcoming season. Next up, we have Hergot, and he built up a nice, strong, young team here, grabbing value all the way up and down the board, pretty much ignored positions and just went with the best value on the board, specifically with his 3rd-round pick starting with Tyreek Hill after he grabbed Richardson and Kyler with his first 2 picks, then especially with J.J. McCarthy in the 4th round, just went value. Then, of course, he did the deal with me, flipping all of his 26 picks for 25 picks from me. So he's looking towards the 25 draft, is no doubt, to strengthen his franchise. Grabbed George Pickens in the 6th round, then made a deal, went back, grabbed Jonathan Brooks. Now, if I'm going to get critical of this, it is a very big, young, old mix. Too much of it almost to look at it as a contender this year, but knowing Hergot, he's just going to play it out, see how it unfolds, and then he's got all these 25 picks now, so he can make plenty of deals if he wants to build on a possible contender if he starts out of the gate hot. All right. Who knows? With Hergot, I wouldn't be surprised if half of this team is traded before the season starts. Next up, we got Break Yourself and Anthony. And Anthony jumped the gun here with Jordan Love in the 1st round, but can't blame him. That's his guy. He's a big Packer fan. He knew that Fantasy Godzilla was picking next. And if you see that big G up there with his emblem. You know that Break Yourself was worried that Adam would grab Jordan Love probably on the way back, not necessarily in the first round. So I can't blame Anthony at all for picking Jordan Love. I mean, I've been saying it all off season. If you take Jordan Love on one hand and Caleb Williams on the other hand, who was the consensus 101, I would take Jordan Love hands down because I've seen it. I do not think that he is going to bust this next season. Caleb Williams, on the other hand, he's been given all the tools necessary to succeed, yet we still don't know if he actually will, right? That's the bottom line. So I really can't blame Anthony at all for picking basically Jordan Love over Caleb Williams because that's really who you're debating here. Now, I mean, yes, you could argue Justin Herbert or Kyler, I guess, into that mix too of these picks. But if you're throwing Jordan Love, Caleb Williams, Herbert, and Kyler into a bag, I don't mind picking Jordan Love out of those four. All right. So that's why he went that way. Puka then in the second round, don't mind that at all. Then he went ahead and grabbed CMC in the third round. Don't mind that value. Most people get critical of people when they take CMC, and it just seems to be no matter where they take McCaffrey, they're getting criticized. I don't mind getting him. I mean, you get him at the 304, the number one non-quarterback player in fantasy. Perhaps the number one warp player again this season. You can't really blame him. What I do question then is his follow-up pick with Xavier Worthy. Okay. You're going CMC, you want to get another hammer. So I would have grabbed a veteran receiver, whether it was Devontae Smith, DK Metcalf, or DJ Moore with his next pick. Now he did get DJ Moore, who fell then to the 504. So I don't know. I guess he should have taken Devontae or DK. That's all I'm saying. I didn't mind it because DK fell to me then at the 411. So I'm not crying. I'm just being critical. All right. I got the notes down here. I don't know. Later on, I saw a chance for him to grab Keenan Allen. Let's see. I know Fantasy Reaper got Keenan Allen. What round was it here? Keenan Allen in the 11th, and Break Yourself went Devin Singletary instead. Now, Singletary's going to score based on volume with the Giants, and maybe he's just was scared of Keenan. I mean, Keenan Allen fell probably a round past his ADP, and so a lot of us were scared of Keenan Allen's age and his new situation in Chicago, whether or not he will gel well with Caleb Williams. Also put into the fact that it's simply a 1-year contract in Chicago, so who knows where he is next year in his age 33 season it will be. So I love Keenan Allen, the player. Have got him. I think he is the most owned player I have, and I am just going to ride him into the ground on my dynasty teams because there's no reason to try and trade him. I mean, what are you going to get for him? Maybe a second, right? You might as well just roll him out there and see him perform. I don't see all three of those receivers in Chicago playing all 17 games for them. So at some point there's going to be some injuries. Who knows? Keenan might be the one that gets most hurt because he's the oldest, but if he's not, and say that Rome or DJ Moore is missing time, well, you can expect Keenan to be the beneficiary of that and be the number one target, at least this season, when that were to happen. So I do like Keenan Allen, at least still for this year. So that's my main critique, other than, he grabbed Michael Penix. I understand following up Matthew Stafford, he wanted to go young. But with Michael Penix and this being Bestball that's going to be a big whopping zero in his lineup for possibly the next 2 years. And that's somebody he grabbed in the seventh round. So I'm just saying that for a seventh rounder, you know, I've been saying through most of this draft process this month, since the Falcons drafted Michael Penix, that if I grab him in the second round, I'm just looking at it as a future 25 first, 26 first, maybe 27 first. All right. And who knows, at that time when he finally gets announced a starter, maybe I need him in my lineup. So I don't hate Penix, the player, just don't love him in best ball. That's all. All right. Moving on then to Fantasy Godzilla. Godzilla started off this draft wide receiver heavy with the value of Justin Jefferson dropping all the way to the 10th pick in the first round, then grabbing Amon Ra on the way back, then jumping on Jaden Daniels, who fell to the third round, came with Devontae Smith on the way back, then Zay Flowers. So Godzilla was looking nice and young early on in this draft through 5 rounds. Went ahead and grabbed Bryce Young, who was the best value at quarterback at that point in the draft. I guess you could argue Bo Nix, but I didn't mind that because I got Bo Nix a couple picks later. Uh, then he grabbed Rashad White, who was nice value in the seventh round. Got the DeAndre Swift on the way back, who at that point, maybe I would have gone with a wide receiver, but he went ahead with DeAndre Swift anyway. Then he grabbed Xavier Legette to stack up with Bryce Young. Now, if I'm getting critical on Godzilla, we have to roll down here to where he grabbed tight ends back to back with Pat Fryermuth and Luke Musgrave. At that point in the draft, I probably would have just grabbed one of these two because it was after the top. Like once you get to Evan Engram after Engram, then there's a big drop in tight end value, and so there was no reason to chase yourself if you're already down at the tight end position. Just punt it, right? You can grab one of those two guys, but there's plenty of other tight ends with similar value later on. I mean, Musgrave and Kraft are 50-50 as far as who's going to be the top dog there. You've got Cade Otton, Chig Okonkwo. You can even go further down here. There's Taysom Hill, Nolan Fant, Juwan Johnson. All these guys, I mean, could easily outscore Musgrave this year. So I don't know. I guess if I'm being real critical, I would have just grabbed another wide receiver. Uh, he could have grabbed Romeo Dobbs instead of Fryermuth and then went Musgrave. He could have grabbed any of these wide receivers here, maybe Khalil Shakir. Uh, so that would have been, I guess, the one critique I've got on Godzilla. But otherwise, he went nice and young. He's looking to build a strong future. Ended up with Jaden Daniels, Bryce Young, and Daniel Jones as his three quarterbacks. Obviously, that's a super young trio. And so we'll see how that plays out for Godzilla. And I've already gone over my squad. And so at the very end, we had at the turn Scoopadopoulos. And Scoop started off with two QBs, Caleb and Justin Herbert. Don't mind that build. I mean, it's hard to argue against the two QB start. Then went Brees Hall. The one thing I found with Scoop's picks was interesting is the guy loves to trade because this guy just drafted value. He was not drafting based on position, hardly at all. He was just grabbing the top value that was there on the board. And I do not hate that philosophy at all. We're 4 months away from playing actual games. Who knows which of these guys will still be on his roster once the season starts. I mean, there could be hype from any of these guys on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, going forward. So, I mean, he does have the stack of Herbert and Ladd, grab Nixon. Nope, that wasn't Scoop. That was Frosty's. So Scoop had JSN and Ricky Pearsall there that were trades. Um, if I'm if I'm going to be critical of Scoop at all, it's that he has a lack of wide receivers. So, I mean, he really is looking at. Can I bring up just his team? Uh, yeah, where's Scoop here? Let's do this and then scroll down. Well, I'm having difficulty getting down there with Scoop. But anyway, if I'm highlighting his players, his wide receiver core right now is JSN, McConkey, Pearsall, Josh Downs, Jermaine Burton, Josh Palmer, Elijah Moore, Jalen Hyatt, Mingo. I mean, there's just not a lot of heavy. I mean, I don't mind having a bunch of bodies at wide receiver. It's just you got to have one or two home run hitters at the beginning then to start with. Okay. That's all I'm saying. Scoop still got a lot of value on that roster, and I'm sure he will make moves to make that happen. Now, roll down. Here's my lineup. I went wide receiver heavy. Didn't grab two running backs, as you could see. I mean, Gus Edwards is my second best running back here, but I got plenty at wide receiver with Marv, Chase, DK, Godwin, Ridley, Hopkins, and Rashid Shaheed. Then later on, grabbing Jalen McMillan, Brandon Cooks, Trey Palmer. So got plenty of talent at wide receiver, which is the way I love to build. And that is the end of my critique for today. Any questions, just go ahead and throw them up in the chat. See a couple of you stopped in. We had a couple of picks here go. I see Van Jefferson finally went off the board. That was our one pick so far during this time. The way we did this draft, which is a way I like, there's no timer. I mean, we're 4 months away from football. What are we in a hurry for, really? Like, are we scared we're not going to get this done before the Hall of Fame game? No, we've got nothing to do in the months of June and July. So, might as well just take our time with this. You guys, if you're doing a new startup, I advise to do it this way in May. There's no reason to not let guys talk over trade deals. Give them a minute or two. I mean, all of us have regular jobs and family and kids' sports, just all sorts of stuff on the side going on. There's no reason to get on each other. This draft is going to end up taking about 2 weeks. Fine. It could have taken 4 weeks. It would have been fine with me. So, that said, we do have the second Birdhouse Dynasty Bestball draft coming up soon. Put a message in the chat if you're interested, or in the comments below underneath this video if you're interested. I'm sending out personal invites for this league. Just let me know that you're interested. I'll give you the details and we'll go from there. It's going to be the same format as this. Looking for some fun action in that draft as well. You know, if you're in already, we've got 7 out of 12 spots filled. So let me know if you're interested. And as always, leave any questions you may have down in the comments below. And with that, I want to say thank you for joining the Birdhouse tonight. We're looking forward to another show, probably tomorrow night or at least Sunday. see what we get to. I'm going to give you my top 5 favorite and least favorite rookies of this rookie draft season. I've got 3 more rookie drafts still to do, so plenty of action coming up in the Birdhouse. Thank you for joining tonight. And remember, never stop working.